Well, hey, Gundam Maniacs, welcome to another episode of Gundam Explained. In this episode, we're going to look at some UC lore that has to do with the Double Zeta Gundam, a cool one, a favorite of mine. But I've always been interested in its core block system, how that worked exactly, so yeah, we're going to dive into that. Hey, before we get started, if you haven't, please subscribe. If you think this is a cool video, give it a like. Check the links in the description for ways you can support the channel if you're into that, or join a Discord. Shout out to the GBO2 group. We've had so much fun playing Gundam Battle Operation 2 on PC, grouping up, just having a blast doing Brawl. If you ever need any tips for GBO2, yeah, just join, ask, we'll help. Let's get started. Okay, so the reason I like the Double Zeta is it's, in my opinion, the perfect evolution of kind of that classic Gundam design that started with the RX-78-2, you know, with those colors we're familiar with, you know, that red, white, and blue kind of look. You know, and the yellow accented a little bit, you know, through the Zeta. So with the original RX-78-2, it had the core block system with the core fighter. When we got to the Zeta Gundam, that one was a little different because it changed into the Wave Rider. So it still had its flight capabilities, but it was a transformable MS. When we get to the Double Zeta, it's very interesting because it does have a transforming mode, but it also has 3 components, almost 5 components if you want to get technical, and we will in a second. And I think it's very interesting, and I haven't really understood all of that. So yeah, let's look at that here real quick. All right, just real quick with that Double Zeta Gundam, it was made for the AUG from Anaheim Electronics. So, you know, they've kind of been behind this Gundam Zeta development in the first place. So there's probably been similar technology shared across. One main aspect of this is the FXA 07GB Neo Core Fighter. Yeah, this is a cool little update to what we know as the Core Fighter, but as it works with the Double Zeta. Now, it's actually used, I want to say there's 3 of them that would be in use total. One being the one that the pilot of the Double Zeta would be using, and then 2 others that would be attached to the other components that would then fly out into battle to meet up with Judo or whoever is piloting to form the complete Double Zeta. All right, and that would be the core top, which it's very interesting if you look at the core top. We're seeing yellow vents on there that would be part of the Double Zeta, even the red that would be part of its cockpit. Below that is the core base. So this is where we saw that core fighter we were talking about, but it's sort of plugged into the back part with the backpack of the Double Zeta. Below the backpack of the Double Zeta, you can actually see the feet. So that's kind of to get an idea of what we're looking at with the feet, the backpack, the beam sabers up at the top. That work great for just extra firepower when it's in that core base mode. And then the G-Fortress is really cool because that's actually the Double Zeta's full-on like Wave Rider mode, if you want to call it that. That's when it transforms into its flight mode instead of its mobile suit mode. It's very cool because in GBO2, you have access to use it like that. So, you know, take this in because I'm going to try to show here in a minute how they all transform together and if it actually even makes sense. And shout out to But Even So on Reddit. I will have a link to this in the description. Also for supporters, this document will be up on the Patreon site. Okay, so what a user did was they took kind of the animation that we would see in Double Zeta of the transforming, just made it 3D. I thought this was just a really cool way for me to kind of look at how the transforming goes, and instead of it being hand-drawn animation, it is, you know, rendered 3D objects that do have a place in space. I hope that makes sense, so we can kind of see what's happening. All right, so we have one component of that, like the core top that we were talking about earlier. We can see the other core fighter here in the back, part of the fortress. We don't see an actual core fighter attached to it. So it could be that these have already flown out, are about to attach, the core fighters fly away. You know, it's something that we see like in, for instance, like Seed Destiny, and I believe Victory Gundam, where they kind of use like laser technology for the different components to attach. But as far as I know, it does require other pilots in core fighters to fly out these various components before they then meet up and then combine. So here's the core fighter that essentially Judo, or the pilot of the mobile suit, is in. It's folding in. And then, okay, now we're getting a look at that part where it's the, you know, the core back, the G-Fortress, whatever, with the backpack here. Again, not the core fighter is not in it at this moment. We can see on the other side that core top. And then now we're seeing that that one part is of the core fighter is plugging in. That's essentially the cockpit that Judo's in. And then after that plugs in, we can see the other core component plug in. This is where the arms are, the wing binders or shields. And then, yeah, we can see that double barrel mega beam launcher. It has a name. That's already plugged into that top part. All right. The wings, the beam sabers are folding. Other components like the shoulders are folding. Now check this out. Here's where the arm is. Actually, yeah, it's right above my head here. The arm, and there's a thruster there. And then the next frame, we can kind of see where hands come out. So that part wasn't necessarily rendered, but you can kind of see up there too, where there's like this panel that opens up. So essentially what it is it's probably the hand where the wrist is. One side is the fist, the other side's a thruster. So that just folds in. And then, yeah, we see the legs kind of fold out there. So when they're folded in, it seems like it's like the knee part that actually has the thruster. It then folds out. Head comes up, and there we go. Now, you know, I believe the animation that we see on TV is a little... It's a little different than what we would get in action figure form. In fact, or Gunpla, and I have the Double Zeta high grade. It doesn't do this transforming. I believe the Master Grade or the Verkad does. I'd like to get my hands on that. I do have the Mobile Suit Ensemble versions, so I do have that to look at. But this is one I believe we don't see too often. Like I even have the Metal Robot Spirits version, or it was a version Kotoki Robot Spirits. It doesn't do any transforming either. So with that is that transforming process. It's something I didn't really understand fully all the time, but this kind of helps me wrap my head around it. And I do enjoy this. It almost reminds me of the G-Fighter that was in the original series that was kind of taken out when it came to the movie trilogy of 0079. Because I do like the transforming aspect, but also the fact that there's other pilots in these newer Neo core fighters that are plugged in to fly it out there for the pilot. All right, here's some sources. I'll have them linked below. Really, I'm using the wiki to get some of the images and the screens I use. I did some other searching, and whereas on Reddit I was able to find that sort of that 3D transformation I used, because I think that was a very good way to kind of wrap my head around what was actually occurring. Even though, again, I don't think it's one-to-one what we're seeing in animation in 3D versus what an action figure or something would be like. And I think that's the same with like the Zeta, for instance. And so the core block system is a favorite of mine. It seems that whenever we have mobile suits that are being produced, sometimes they're prototypes or experimental units that have a core block system, once they're put in mass production, usually that component is taken out just because of the cost in universe. But out of universe and as an action figure or toy, I think that is a neat part of it. I am into spaceships, designs of spaceships and fighters, and I like how they can combine into robots or whatever. Even that G-Fortress mode that the Double Zeta has is a very cool and unique looking design for a spacecraft, because it's based on that gigantic Double Zeta. That Double Zeta, once we got to that point in Gundam development, they were going all out with the size, the shields, and everything. And that is carried on throughout. So, for instance, F91 doesn't have any sort of core fighter to it, although Victory does, and it also has components. In fact, in Victory Gundam, if a component gets damaged, it can shoot out another one for it to attach to, and I really like that as well. But then there's also Crossbone, which within the Crossbone universe, Judo does exist, and he still uses his Double Zeta Gundam, even though it is, by then, it's been repaired in such a way that it does look a little different, but it's really cool to see that mobile suit from that time period, you know, late 80s UC, can still be used during the Crossbone period, which I believe is, you know, 120s to 30s within the Gundam UC timeline. And the Crossbone does also have a core fighter element where it's the longer X sort of thrusters that plug into the back of the mobile suit. Anyway, there you have it, the core block system for the Double Zeta Gundam. I think it's a really cool. I wish I had more of the Gunpla or whatever of that, so I'm going to have to hunt that down. But let me know what you think, or if you have any variations or action figures or Gunpla of this, because I think it's very cool. And are there other core block based mobile suits that you're a fan of? Because I'd like to like research and look into them. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. We'll talk later.